Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, I'm digging through some scraps here, and I'm going to be making some journal covers. You've seen me do that before, but I got thinking about today's topic. It's been 1 year, I think to the day, when I purchased my Cobra 26 sewing machine. And this was one of the first projects that I practiced sewing on, was making journal covers. So I'm gonna take a break from sorting through this leather, looking for pieces that are good for that. And I'll meet you over at the sewing machine, because I thought I would cover, since it's been a year, some of my thoughts and ideas on the sewing machine. Plus, I think I need to probably close my garage door. I appreciate you taking time to be with me in the shop today. All right, so I guess let's back up for just a moment. I thought on buying a sewing machine for probably close to 2 years. And I have some people kind of question, I don't use it on everything that I could use it on. And my belts, to me, are my specialty. It's kind of my calling card. I've never used a sewing machine on a belt, and obviously you could save a lot of time doing so. And I think in most cases the sewing machine for stitching on a belt would be acceptable, but I really pride myself on my belts, and they're all hand sewn. They've always been all hand sewn, and as long as I can hand sew the belts, then that's what I'm going to do. And I think people appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into that. And that's not knocking anybody that wants to sew with a sewing machine on a belt. I think it makes financial sense to do so, and I think you can still create a quality belt. But I just wanted to put that out there as a disclaimer. I don't look down on anything being sewn with a sewing machine. If you can figure out how to sew whatever your project is on a sewing machine, and that's what you want to do, then I say go for it. All right. So with that set aside, the next thing I was doing was trying to figure out what sewing machine was I going to use. And I think really more than anything, a couple of YouTube channels that I was following at the time, they had Cobra sewing machines. I'd been to the Prescott Leather Show a couple times at that point and had played with the Cobra sewing machine, and I felt comfortable with that. And I know that there's a wide range of sewing machine companies out there, and I'm sure they produce, I don't know if you can hear the thunder or not, but I'm sure they produce a good sewing machine too, especially if you're using it for the weight of leather that it's designed to be used for. So why the 26 instead of a 4 or a 20 or whichever one? It seemed like at the time that I was looking, it matched up best for what I was sewing. And I've said it before, I basically purchased the sewing machine to make bags with. And I've sewn, as I said in the beginning there, I've sewn journal covers with it. And other than that, it's really been bags and totes that I've sewn with it. Dop kits, kind of a bag as well. So when I started looking at that, what's the thickest leather I'm going to sew? And the thickest leather I use on a bag is typically about 6 ounces. And so I figured, you're sewing 2 pieces of leather together, so 6 is 12, and that's well within the range of what it's rated to sew. It's rated to sew up to 7/16. I've had other people say it'll sew anything you can get underneath the foot on the sewing machine. And my experience has been along the same route. I've only had, I think, I had one issue where I was sewing a seam, and I had to end up readjusting the sewing machine. And at the time, I thought I'd made a mistake. But I'll tell you, someone, when they assembled the sewing machine, made a mistake. On the main shaft that drives and keeps track with the needle and all that assembly, there are 3 set screws on the bottom there that you would loosen up to reset the timing for when the needle comes down and and it's supposed to connect with the bobbin, and it ended up slipping. And when I went in and followed Al Bain's video on how to adjust that and fix that, you have to go in, you loosen up the 3 set screws. Well, when I went to loosen up the 3 set screws, only one of them was tight. The other 2 are loose from the factory. And that's been the only time I've had it slip. So I reset the timing on there, which is really pretty easy to do if you can just follow the mechanical instructions that Al lays out. And I tightened that up, and I've not had it slip since then. And I've sewn some pretty thick leather. I do think that the vegetable tan leather seems to sew easier than some of the chrome tan. Some of those, I don't think they're quite as stiff, and as a result of that, the needle, I think, has a harder time going through them because it wants to deflect with the needle. So just my opinion and experience on that. Let me show you a couple other things on the sewing machine. So now we're around here looking at the back of the sewing machine, and I bring this up. I would say I believe this sewing machine is built durable enough that for the average user of this, someone that's not running it 40 hours a week, sewing forever and ever and ever, I think this sewing machine would probably last them a lifetime as long as you keep it oiled. And I've mentioned this before, but the oiling locations are clearly marked with red paint where to oil them. This one in here, if you don't get a flashlight and look in there to see, it's in there about 1.5 inches. And the oiling bottle that they give you with the machine doesn't reach that. You have to get something different to get that. And if you just drop an oil in here, you're not reaching what needs to be oiled. So that was the one thing. And I talked with the owner of the Leather Machine Company at the Prescott show this last year. And my suggestion was that they spend a little bit more on a better oiling bottle. And this is the oil bottle that I got as a result of that. And it's got a long nozzle on it so that I can reach in there and oil that. And then also, I think it says every 8 hours, so that would be like each shift. If you're oiling all the time, you need to oil these spots. Typically, I end up probably oiling it more than that because if it sits for a week and I haven't used it, I'll oil it before I put it to use, because the lightweight oil, I think, can drain out of some of these areas here. And I mentioned it before in other videos, I keep a piece of veg tan leather underneath the foot here so that when it's sitting, let me pull this back out of here, the oil collects off the foot. Because early on, there was a couple times that I would drop the foot, bring the needle down, and then end up with a stain on the leather. Thankfully, each time I did that, it was a chrome tan or oil tan leather, and it didn't mark it like it would if it was on veg tan. The next thing I want to talk about is I really think that it would be nice if, and I've looked on Leather Machine Company's website a couple times to see if there's another arm that you can put off of here to hold spools. I've got 2 spools on here. Typically, I'm sewing with one and I'm winding bobbins with the other one. And it would just be nice to have them on here somewhere else. So I will say, if I could find just these plastic dishes, and I can just put a rack here, but it seems like the shape of them does a really good job of not allowing thread to get underneath them. But I've thought about making something to mount along here to hold more spools, and I can go put them away in a box or whatever, but it's nice to have it convenient, and I'm more apt to change to another color that may suit the project better. Then I purchased just a box here to keep bobbins and needles and such in here as well. So this next thing is just my opinion as well. I guess all this is just my opinion. So, I mean, it's free advice. It's definitely worth the price you paid for it. But this table here, I had thought about, I'm a woodworker, and I thought about making my own table. And at the last minute, I'm like, I'll just get that done. And I like the table. I can't imagine having this without that. Obviously you can hold the your project up and work it on the cylinder arm. And that's one reason why I got it, is a cylinder arm. And I've used it multiple times where I need to get the project over the cylinder arm or around it in some way. So I do use it without the table, but more than not, I end up using it with the table. And so I would just say for the $100 for the table, I would get that. What I do wish is that they made, I think they need to rethink about their design on how this attaches to the table that the sewing machine is attached to. It's a little bit awkward with the wing nuts on here, and it takes several minutes to get it off and get it adjusted. It'd be nice if there was some type of a quick connect. And I've said before, I need to think on another way to connect and remove the table. It would be much more convenient if it was quicker and easier to do. But like I said, I think I would go with that. The only other thing, and I know you can buy clamp-on lights and such, but it's not lit really very well here. And I am in a garage, so my space isn't probably the best lighting. And I know sometimes, I struggle with the lighting for the YouTube videos. I could probably improve the lighting on there quite a bit. But it'd be nice if there was a light. You need the light here on the front, but it almost really needs to be on the back as well. So it would really be nice if they had some type of a light that was maybe attached here that took care of the front side of this or the back. But like I said earlier, you can find clamp-on lights, and I suppose I can drill another hole and maybe find a light similar to this LED light to go on there. So let me just wrap up there. I would recommend buying it. I have no problems with the Cobra 26. I've made some holsters, some fairly thick holsters. It'd be nice if I could sew something thicker, but then you give up sewing something thin like the journal covers. The Cobra 4, that's a beast of a machine as well. And no, I'm not going to talk myself into having two sewing machines. The thicker leather, I so rarely sew items that are that thick. I can hand sew those items and stick with this. And I've used, if you're thinking about thread color, it seems like I end up using the bronze, which is what I've got threaded in the machine right now. The bronze and the black the most. I do use the beige at times, and I've purchased a few other colors as well. I hope this answers maybe some of your questions about my thoughts on this. And if you're looking at buying a sewing machine, I think the Leather Machine Company Cobra 26 is a great sewing machine as well. I appreciate you taking time to watch my video today. Please like, share, and subscribe. But more importantly, I hope you have a great day.